these are all factors that have to be taken into account as we go through this. Now, like we talked about, I don't have any real big kids. You know, I don't have the corn-fed Midwest kids that I'm used to. I've got some really small guys. But what I do have to my advantage is I have one of the top 100-meter runners in the state. I have the top high jumper in the state. I have a quarterback that runs a faster 40 than either of those two guys. And this is throughout the school. Even our volleyball players, I have some of the fastest 200 and 400 runners on our volleyball team. And so this is something that I've begun to harness. Now, everything has kind of come together real nice. You know, my background is within speed. We have kids that are fast. We run offenses that are built for that. You know, we run an RPO system in football. We run kind of a run and gun in basketball. That's just how we're designed. The coaches realize what we have, and part of our strength program is that we focus on that. Now, when we go through these things, I don't want it to seem like we don't lift. We do lift. We're in the weight room 3 to 4 days a week. I am just highlighting the speed side of this, okay? So there is more to this than just what I'm going to cover today. So why is this speed piece so important? You know, I was talking to somebody earlier, and I almost feel like a lot of these presentations are coming together very nicely. From what Coach Greer talked about last night to some of the topics that were talked about this morning, you know, I'm seeing this common thread that's moving through it. So why is speed so important? Well, speed is so important because it'll improve our coordination. It improves our hip movement and our hip mobility. It's going to improve our balance. It'll improve our inter and intramuscular coordination. It improves from a neuromuscular system, just the transmission of those signals. So this is something that if we want to move better, if we want to move more efficiently, then we need to be moving fast. You know, we need to have some element of speed within our program. Now, when I talk about speed, I'm going to break it down into two gross patterns or subsets. We're going to have accelerated abilities, and we're going to have top-end speed abilities. Now, as I create this program and I create our structure, there are some things that I'm going to keep in mind. When I talk about and when I'm thinking about what we're going to do from an acceleration standpoint, we need to be able to get up to our top speed as fast as possible. I know that we have to achieve 83% of our max velocity before we hit the 20-yard line. We have to. I know that when we're in an upright position, that we have to be able to absorb and then create 4 to 5 times body weight and force at ground contact. So these are things, and again, this applies to the weight room, but also what we're doing on the field. So these are some thoughts that I'm constantly keeping in my mind as we go through this. Now, a couple things that I make sure that I cover with my athletes before we get started. If we want to compete fast, we have to train fast. And what I mean by that is, when we do our speed drills, I tell my athletes every single time, these reps have to be all out. Every single time, our sprints have to be all out. 95% of our max velocity or higher. Now, I'll give them as much rest as they need, unless this is some type of conditioning drill. But if we are training for speed truly, then I'll give them the rest that they need. But that means that I need everything they've got on every single rep. So, one thing that I'm going to allude to multiple times today is our max velocity. How do I measure our max velocity? How do I track it? Well, there are multiple systems that you can use out there. I use a free-lap system. All that is a belt with a watch on it. And then I have 2 timing gates. I'll set one timing gate up at the 30-yard line. I'll set a second timing gate up at the 40-yard line. I'll have the athletes accelerate, and I'll tell them that I want them to sprint through the 50. Because if I say through the 40, they're going to stop a step or two short, or they begin to relate it to a 40-yard sprint, and then that just messes with them mentally. So I just say I want you to run 50 yards as fast as you can. But I emphasize that I want the section between the 2 timing gates to be top speed. It's got to be as fast as they can get going. So at that point, now I have their time at max velocity over 10 yards. So that gives me my yards per second. Now, I convert it to meters per second only because that's what a lot of the research is in, and a lot of it comes from the track side of things. But if all you're doing is tracking and collecting and then comparing to where you're at, yards per second is completely fine. So We've talked a little bit about social media and its play in our programs. This is something that once I track it and I record it, you better believe it's going to go up on social media. And those kids love that, especially the kids that are, top 5 or top 10. But I'm going to record these speeds, I'm going to record these times, and they're going to go up on a monthly basis. So, again, we're talking about our accelerative top-end speed abilities. Now, as we move on to our training for the day, there are a couple things that we're going to go through before we even get out onto the field. Last night we talked in the panel a little bit about what I do from a warm-up standpoint. When the athletes come in, they're going to start out on a lacrosse ball, a foam roller, something just to begin to start that warm-up process, because they've come in from sitting in a chair for the last hour, possibly 2 hours, when they come in to see me. And so we're going to start with some type of tissue preparation. Once we go through that, I have a wall with whatever you want to call them, corrective exercises, special stretch exercises, whatever that may be. And so the athletes have to pick 3 of them that they're going to go through. On a speed day, I instruct them to pick an exercise for the hip flexor, quad, and then hamstring, sometimes the calf, depending on the athlete. And so they're going to go through that. Once they've gone through their 3 exercises, that typically takes us about 4 or 5 minutes to go through. Then we're going to get out on the field and we're going to start our dynamic warm-up. All right? Our dynamic warm-up will last somewhere between 9 and 12, 9 and 13 minutes, and then we're ready to start getting into the drills. So, the first thing that we're going to go through are our movement primers. All right? Now, these 2 drills, I'm sure you guys have seen, some of you guys have probably done. So the first drill that we're going to go through is just going to be a wall drive. Now, this is a drill that I've seen trashed before. I've seen people say that they have no purpose. I want to introduce it in this light. This drill is what I use to create context and intent for my athletes. When we get set up here, we're going to set up with our bodies flat at a 45-degree angle. That foot is back behind the hip. You're going to see a slight elevation in that heel off the ground. Now, my first instruction and intent. Our goal is to push this fence over. We're not setting up with the fence holding us up. We're trying to drive that thing over. So I'm trying to create this intent for them, understanding why we're doing it. Context. When the foot is down on the ground, we're going to talk about how we have a little bit of heel elevation, but when we come up, we've got that toe pulled up. You can see Tim here, the second guy, he's struggling with this a little bit. We're still trying to develop an Achilles tendon in this kid. So we're going to set up here, and I talk about, we want the ankle to act like a spring, not like a wet noodle. Okay? When I get up into that stride position, that ankle needs to be nice and tight, so when I hit the ground, I get a good pop off the ground. Otherwise, if I've got my foot hanging here, I step down. I get nothing out of that. So we're talking about that context. The other thing that this allows me to begin to talk about is, let's listen to. You can feel what's going on, but let's listen to what's going on. Even on turf, if you get a good push into the ground with a nice tight angle, you can still hear that pop. We're going to talk about, I want you to listen to your steps, and I want you to understand what we're looking for as we go through this. The last thing that we're going to talk about is, I want their eyes looking down to where the in this case, fence and the ground meet, or wall and the floor meet, creating that neutral cervical spine. So we want to be long and strong. That's one thing that I'm going to keep saying to them as we go through this. You're long and strong, long and strong. Every position we're going to get into, long and strong. So this is the first position that we're going to start at. After we get done with our wall drives, we're going to go to, and then you'll see here we do a 2-step count. We'll go 3-step count as well.